Hello aspirants, welcome to the Sparda line. We are bringing one new initiative called Complete Indian Polity Through MCQ. And this initiative is very useful for the people who are writing UPSC, KPSC as a PSI and other exams. And there are some rationales behind bringing these initiatives because you have seen the previous year questions that came in the UPSC, came in KPSC or other exams. Because if you see these questions, you will find these all questions covered in the Lakshmikan itself, but still you will miss that. So because this phenomena is there because of the four reasons. So these four reasons are, first one is what we do, we interpret the question wrongly. So the wrong interpretation is the first reason behind why we miss the question. Second is the why we miss the question because our inability to read between the line. Okay. The third reason why we miss the question because we solely rely on Lakshmikant. So for Indian polity, Lakshmikant is sufficient but not enough. Okay. So why we need to go and explore beyond the Lakshmikant, and how that we will going to see through this MCQ. Again, there is a last and not least that reason is the why we miss the questions. Okay, wrong interpretation, we know we interpret wrongly, we rely on Lakshmikant. There is one more reason that we know, everyone knows, that is the lack of concentration while reading. Okay, so why this phenomena occurs and how it leads to wrong attempts? Because if we skip a single word or if we mismatched, there is some mismatch, then definitely we are going to lose the marks in that particular question. How we'll see this from the some examples. Okay, how this wrong interpretation or our inability to read between line, this phenomena occurs in previous questions also. We can see it. So this particular question, that with reference to Indian judiciary, consider following statement. This question is from the 2021 UPSC CSC prelims examinations. Okay, and if you read the question, okay, those who are attempted 2021 these prelims, they will be knowing this question very well. So this question says that any retired judge of the Supreme Court of India can be recalled back to sit and act as a Supreme Court judge by the Chief Justice of India with the prior permission of the President of India. So this is the first statement. This is statement directly came from the Lakshmikant. If you read it properly without losing concentration, then you can mark it correct. Second question, second statement, you see, the High Court in India has the power to review its own judgment as the Supreme Court does. Okay, so if you remember in 2021, then when the institutes they released their answer keys, 99% of institutes says this statement is correct. But when the actual UPSC answer key came, that time UPSC said this question is wrong. And why this is wrong? Because many people have criticized UPSC for giving the wrong answer, but it is the correct answer, and this is the reference is in Lakshmikant. Now I have brought some text from the Lakshmikant itself. It talks about the, as a court of record, the High Court also has the power to review and correct its own judgment or order or decision, even though no specific power of the review confirmed on it by the Constitution. Okay. Second statement is the Supreme Court, on other hand, has the specifically confirmed the power of review by the Constitution. And this text, it is from the Indian Polity by M. Lakshmikant, 6th edition, which came in 2020. And again I have given the chapter 34, that is High Court. Subtopic is there 6, that a court of record, page number 34.8. Okay, so the 1 year before this particular edition came, and that edition there was a clear reference of this statement. And if you have read this statement properly and you have interpreted it properly, then only you will understand why this statement is wrong. Okay, and the UPSC answer key was correct that time, even though many people criticize this. So that's why I'm telling the correct interpretation and reading between the line is very important when it comes to the Indian polity by the Lakshmikant, okay, for the particular book. And this particular book we are going to cover through the MCQ to avoid this kind of mistake. Second, one point I mentioned that one is that we solely rely on Lakshmikant, but if you see the questions that coming in UPSC, they are referring the questions, okay, which in Lakshmikant, the context is in Lakshmikant, but they are going beyond Lakshmikant. What they have Lakshmikant mentioned, they are going and just bringing the other facts also. So this first statement you see, as per the rules of procedure and the conduct of business in Lok Sabha, the election of deputy speaker shall be held on such date that speaker may fix. Okay, this is the particular term as per the rule of procedure and conduct of business. This is not mentioned in Lakshmikant. So for that you need to go and search. You need to explore the things. That time only you will understand. Again, the certain one example I can give you. Currently there is no deputy speaker to in Lok Sabha. Okay, and Lakshmikant they have mentioned that if speaker wants to resign, okay, then he or she should hand over resignation to deputy speaker. Now the office of deputy speaker is vacant. So then whom he will hand over the resignation? Now this fact is not mentioned in Lakshmikant, but UPSC ask in future examination, what you will do? That time you will say that this question is coming from out of box, but they have mentioned in Lakshmikant, then we need to analyze the situation. And to avoid these kind of things, I am bringing this initiative. There we will see the Lakshmi will cover the M Lakshmikant through the MCQ, and I will be giving you this extra fact. Now, for particular this question, when the office of deputy speaker is vacant, okay, that time speaker he can hand over his resignation to Secretary General of Lok Sabha. And this particular fact that mentioned in the rules of the presiding officers in Lok Sabha, there is the particular rules which govern the office of speaker, and this particular rule mentioned about this fact that if office of deputy speaker is vacant, then the speaker can hand over resignation to Secretary General of Lok Sabha, and the Secretary General of Lok Sabha further he puts the resignation in the house, then house accepts it. Okay, so this is the fact given in that particular rules, and this is not mentioned in Lakshmikant. So this is the way what is mentioned, something is referred in Lakshmikant but not mentioned explicitly, that you need to go and explore. And this, to reduce this task, I am bringing this initiative. So watch till end, you will understand, you will get many these kind of facts. Okay, next question is I am talking about the one more phenomena, that is the lack of concentration. Now the question is very easy. Okay, the bill amending constitution requires the prior recommendation of the President of India. Now many of you find it is the correct one, okay, or wrong one. It depends on how much your concentration has when you read this particular M Lakshmikant. So many will think that logically it is correct, but it is wrong. There is no need of prior recommendation of president. Okay, so if you lost the concentration and you think that logically you can answer the questions in Indian polity, then ultimately you are going to lose the marks. So for that you need to have you need to have concentration while reading the Lakshmikant. You need to interpret the question, statements in clearly. Also you need to explore what is mentioned in Lakshmikant but it is not explained. So that things you need to go and explore it. So this is the all task we are going to in this session, and today's session we are going to cover the first chapter, that is historical background. So all the acts from 1773 to 1947, these all acts we are going to cover in today's session. Okay, and all the major facts we are going to cover. So without wasting time, we will start. Now the first question, you can pause the video and read the question. So question is in Kannada as well as English. Who wants comfortable English, they can read in English, and who are comfortable in Kannada, they can read in Kannada. So the question says that it is about the Regulating Act of 1773. The first statement talks about it is marked the first direct intervention of the British government in affairs of East India Company. Okay, Second, it started the process of concentration of administration by making the Governor General of Bombay and Madras subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. Third statement is that it established Supreme Court at Calcutta with the Chief Justice and the 3 other judges. Fourth statement is that Act established Supreme Court at the Calcutta with the 1 Chief Justice and the 3 judges independent of company's control. Okay, so these are the 4 facts that I have given in this particular statement. So you can answer this statement. The correct answer is the D. These all are correct, because this was the first direct intervention of British East India Company that to control the political and the commercial affairs of the East India Company. Second, also it is started the process of centralization. It is picked at the Act of 1833, but it is started, if the question comes when the process of centralization started, then it is 1773. Okay, so this is the one more fact you need to remember. Third is that it established Supreme Court at Kolkata and the Chief Justice and 3 other judges, and these were, it was the independent of company's control. So these all statements are correct. So you get to know the 4 facts here. Okay, so we'll move towards the next question. This is about the Act of 1781. You can pause the video and read the question. So before going to this question, we'll just need to see some facts related to the previous this one, 1773 Act. Okay, some facts are there that you need to remember. First is it was the first direct intervention in the political affairs and the political or commercial affairs of the country. Before that, in 1767, the British government asked to give 10% shares to its stakeholders, company stakeholders. Okay, so this was first was the intervention, but when it comes to the intervention in political and commercial affairs of the country, when Act of 1773 was the first intervention. Second, it was the first time that the political affairs of the company recognized by British government. So it was also the first time. Third fact is that it laid the foundation for centralized administration in India. So these are the 3 facts that you need to know about, and the question will come from here, where the first time was there. And so if you not remember this, then definitely you will go into lose the mark. So note down these facts. Next question, we'll see about the this question. We'll see about the Amendment Act of 1781. Okay, this particular act, it talks about there are the few statements regarding this act. Okay, it restricted jurisdiction of the Supreme Court by excluding the revenue and official matters from its control. Okay, this is the first statement. Second statement is appeal from the provincial courts were liaised with the Supreme Court. Third statement is the Supreme Court was empowered to regulate the working of provincial council. Okay, so pause the video and mark the correct statement, correct answer. So the correct answer for this statement is the 1. These 2 are wrong. Why they are wrong? Because if you read the carefully, you will understand the appeal from provincial court were taken to the not Supreme Court but at Governor General's Council. Okay. Second, third statement, Supreme Court empowered to regulate, not Supreme Court but Governor General empowered to regulate the working of Provincial Council. And who was the Governor General this time? Was the Warren Hastings. He was the Governor General, and he was the first Governor General of Bengal. Okay, in Act of 1973, it made the Governor of Bengal, that is Governor General of Bengal. Okay. Next question. It is again about the Pitt's India Act 1784. Okay, this particularly act, the Pitts, who is one youngest Prime Minister of Britain. He became the Prime Minister at early 20s. Okay, so after him, this particular act is named the Pitts Act. Okay, so the act says that it created system of double government by separating commercial affairs and the political affairs. Second is the Board of Control could only supervise military matters, while revenue and the civil matter remained under company. Third statement is the company's territories in India were for first time officially described as British possession in India. So pause the video and answer the question. So the correct answer is the 1 and 3. The second statement is wrong because the Board of Control, it is not only the military but also it is allowed to regulate the revenue and the civil matters of the revenue and the political affairs of the country. Okay. So second statement is wrong because the Board of Control, it allowed to supervise not only military but also revenue and civil matters. Okay, so that is also company, and under company that court of director, it was the representative of company and it is allowed to govern the commercial affairs of company. So there was the clear demarcation of power and it was the double system of government started with this act. Okay, the next question, it is about with reference to Charters Act of 1793. Okay, so there are the three statements given for the particular act. You need to answer that one. For the first time, Governor General and the governors got overriding powers over their council. It renewed the East India Company's trade monopoly in India for the 20 more years. Third statement, it provided that the salaries of members of Board of Control and its staff were to be paid out of Indian revenue. So pause the video, answer the question. So correct answer for this question is the B. That is 2 and 3 is correct. First is wrong because if you remember there was one more act that came in 1786 and this under this particular act there was a one Governor General. Let me know of Governor General in comment section. That particular Governor General, he got the overriding power over his council and this particular Governor General, he led the British in the war in America, the freedom war, the war for independence that fought in Americans as and the British. So this particular Governor General, he fought there, he got defeated, then he made the Governor General of India, and that time he wanted the power, that the overriding power over his council. Also second provision was that the Governor General, he would be the commander in chief. So these two the provisions introduced in particular this act of 1786, and this was the first act where the Governor Generals and governor got overriding power over their council. Okay, so this statement is wrong. And further, in this act of 1793, this particular overriding power, it is continued with the all future Governor Generals. Okay, so this is the one more fact. Third statement, it provides the salaries of member of Board of Control and staff for the out of Indian revenue. So what we call economical drain. this economical drain started from this particular act 1793. So if question comes, when the economical drain started, okay, this was the one of the component of economical drain, that the salaries of the Britishers or the that working in Britain, they will be taken from the Indian revenue. So this was the one of the component of economic drain, and it started the foundation for economic drain lied in 1793 act. So these are the few facts. Also, there was a one more aspect introduced in this particular act, that was the governor generals. The governor general of Bengal was there. His power over the provinces of Bombay, the Madras, the control over these two provinces further strengthened. This is the one more fact you need to remember here. Okay. So next, we'll move toward the next statement. Next question. That is about the Charter Acts 1813. So the statements are that it is completely abolished the East India Company's trade monopoly in India, including tea and the trade with China. Okay. Second statement, it is permitted Christian missionary to enter India and promoted spread of Western education. Third statement is it empowered the local government in India to impose the taxes on the persons and punish defaulters. So pause the video, answer the question. So the correct answer for this question is the 2 only. First statement is wrong because it says that it completely abolished East India Company's trade monopoly in India, including tea and trade with China. It was the excluding. So while reading the Lakshmikant, if you don't have the concentration, then there are very high chances that you will miss the question. Second, while reading the question itself, if you would have lost a concentration, and if you miss this word particularly, if you not read this particular word properly, then definitely you will miss the question. Okay. Second statement, it is permitted Christian missionary to enter India. So this statement is correct. Third statement, it promoted spread of Western education. Okay. There was one previous year question where they asked that when the English education introduced in India. So if the question comes, the answer is the Act of 1813. Okay. So this statement, the promoted spread of Western education, nothing but the English education. Okay, so this is one more fact that came from PYQ. You need to remember. Third statement, it empowered the local government. Now, what is local government? Local government, nothing but the governments that working below the Governor General of Bengal. So the local government here are the Governor of Bombay, Province of Bombay, and Province of Madras. So don't confuse it. That is local governments doesn't means here local self-government that works at the last third tier, that is municipality and panchayat. So this is not talking about that government. They're talking about local government means government at Bombay and government at Madras. Okay, and these two governments, they given the right to impose tax on the person and punish the defaulter. And now there is one more fact that why this particular act came in this particular situation. Okay, there was one historical development why the British Parliament, they abolished the monopoly of East India Company on trade with India, because if you see this particular time, that 1813, okay, this was this time seen that rise of Napoleon in Europe. Okay, and Napoleon, that he pursued the policy of continentality, so it wanted to naval blockade of the Britain, and the British wanted the more finance to finance their wars with Napoleon. So for that, to finance their wars, they abolished East India Companies the monopoly with Indian trade, and so they got the more finance that they invested in fighting war with Napoleon. So this is the historical background, and these aspects that I call the reading between the line. So these are the things that you need to read here. Okay, there are some historical development, then only this particular acts came. Okay, next is that this particular act with reference to Charter Act of 1833. So two statements are there. all civil and military powers vested in Governor General of India. Second is the successfully introduced open competitive system for the recruitment to civil service which allowed Indians equal opportunity. To answer the pause the video, answer the question. So here if we see the correct answer is the A, that is one only. Second statement is wrong because they introduced the open competition, but after the opposition from board of director, they dropped this particular provision. So this provision never came introduced in this particular act while implementing. So the first statement is only correct. Next statement for next question for this particular act. So if you want to see the other major developments that happened in this act of this particular act, that is the Charter Act of 1833. So why this act is very crucial? Because the Governor General of Bengal, the nomenclature is changed to the Governor General of India, and William Bentinck was the first Governor General of India. Second, it is introduced the centralized administration. So now there is two pact. In 1773, it started the laid the foundation for centralized administration, but actual centralized administration introduced in this particular act, that 1833. So centralized administration introduced to the depriving governments of Bombay and Madras from their legislative power. So these two important development were there. And when it comes to East India Company, it is abolished the East India Company's monopoly of the tea with China, tea and trade with China. Tea that they used to bring from China to India, as well as they had monopoly to with respect to trade to China. This abolished, and for that after this the East India Company become purely administrative body. Okay, so this is the one more fact, that which act made the East India Company pure administrative body. Then the answer is the Act of 1833. So these are the few acts that you need to remember under this particular act. Okay, so next question is about the Act of 1853. So read the statements carefully. The first time it separated legislative and executive function of the Governor General's Council. Okay. Second, it extended the company's rule in India for 20 years, continuing its possession of Indian territories on the trust for the British Crown. Okay. So this is second statement. Third statement, it introduced Indian representation in the Indian Legislative Council. Pause the video, answer the question. Kannada medium student can read this. So if you see the carefully question, the third statement is wrong. Okay. Second statement is also wrong. The first statement is the correct. So the answer is the only one. Now the why the second statement is wrong? Because it is not extended the company's monopoly for another 20 years. It told that company will hold the British possession in India till the until the company enjoys competence of the British Crown. Okay. Also, the third statement, it introduced Indian representation of Indian Legislative Council. It is not Indian representation, but it is the local representation. So there is the again confusion. When they call the local representation Indian representation, when they say the Indian representation, they are the particular Indian people introduced in Legislative Council. When they call this particular act, it introduced the local representation. Local representation means there are the provinces, that British provinces, they got the representation into this Governor General's Council. So what are the 4 provinces that got representation? The 4 seats that got by the governors of these governments in the Agra, Northwest Province, and the Bombay, and the Madras. So these governments, local governments, got the representation in the legislative council. Okay. So this is the one more catch here you need to understand. Also, this particular under this particular act, 1853, the British introduced the open competition for the civil service. And let me know in comment section who was the chairman of the Indian Civil Service Committee, okay, or Commission, and who recommended for this open competition. Okay, so this is about the Act of 1853. Next is the Act of 1858. So the 2 statements are there. The Viceroy of India was directly responsible to the British Parliament. Okay. Second statement is Secretary of State for India was the responsible to the British Cabinet. Third statement is the Secretary of State in Council had no legal status and could neither sue or sued in India. So pause the video, answer the question. So the correct answer for this question is the none. That is, none of the statement is correct. Because if you see, the Viceroy of India was directly responsible. There is one crucial development happened under this act, Act of 58, that Governor General of India, he became Viceroy of India. So this is the development. And this Viceroy of India, he was responsible to not British Parliament but the Secretary of State. Let me know in comment section who was the first Viceroy of India and who was the first Secretary of State of India. Second is the Secretary of State of India was the responsible for the British Cabinet. No, he was responsible for the British Parliament, and he was the member of British Cabinet. And the Secretary of State had the complete authority over administration of India. So this is the one more catch. If question comes, who had complete authority on British or the British Indian administration, then don't write mark correct answer is Viceroy. It was the Secretary of State. Okay, he was had the complete authority over Indian administration, British Indian administration. Third statement, the Secretary of State in Council had no legal. He had the legal status and he could sue or be sued in India as well as in England or the Britain. So this is the one more fact you need to remember here. Okay, and this particular, the Office of Secretary of State, this established under this particular act. Okay, and with this there was a one council to advise in 50-member council to advise him, and this particular council is abolished in Government of India Act in 1935. So this is about the Act of 53. That are the crucial facts you need to know. Next question will move towards the Indian Council Act of 1861. Now this particular act, if you see, it made the beginning of separate representative institution by introducing the Indians as the official members in Legislative Council. It provided for the establishment of Legislative Council in Bombay, Madras only. It restored legislative powers of Madras and Bombay, which had been taken away from in 1833. First statement is empowered the Viceroy to issue ordinance with concurrence of the Legislative Council. So pause the video and answer the question. So the correct answer for this question will go the statement wise. It made the beginning of representative institution introducing Indian into official members of as an official member in legislative council. Now the first statement many of you would have marked correct, but it is wrong because Indians are not introduced as official members, but they introduced as a non-official members, and this is the where the Indian polity demands your concentration while reading the M. Lakshmidam, because they clearly mentioned that the Indians introduced as a non-official members, and the three Indians that introduced was the Maharaja of Banaras, Maharaja of Patiala, and the Sir Dinkar Rao. So these were the three Indians that got representation as non-official members in Indian Legislative Council. Okay. Second statement, it provided the establishment of Legislative Council in Bombay, Madras only. No, it provided again the Legislative Council for the Punjab, Northwest province also. Now there were the two different Northwest province and the Northwest Frontier province. When it comes to Northwest province, it is about the province of Agra. And when it comes to Northwest province, Northwest Frontier province, it is the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in present-day Pakistan. So there is a difference. Remember it. Next, it restored legislative power of Madras and Bombay that had been taken away in 1833. So this statement is correct. Fourth statement is it empowered Viceroy to issue ordinance with the concurrence of Legislative Council. Again, if you have concentration, then only you will answer this question correctly. It is not with concentration, but without concurrence of the Legislative Council. And this particular ordinance, which has the validity for the 6 months. So same only carried in present day constitution itself. Okay. So this is the fact you need to know about this particular act, that is Government of India Act 1861. Okay. So again you need to one the fact you need to remember, this particular act introduced a portfolio system, and this portfolio system in later on in Indian context it is evolved into cabinet system. Okay, so this is the one more fact you need to remember about this particular act. Okay, so we'll move towards the next question. Next question is about the Indian Council Act 1892, and its first statement is that it increased the function of legislative councils and allowed discussion on the budget. It introduced principle of election through the nomination for the first time. It increased the number of non-official members to provide non-official majority in Central Legislative Council. Fourth statement, it made the Governor General's assent to bill optional. So pause the video, answer the question. So we'll see the correct statement here. The increase the function of Legislative Council allowed the discussion of budget. Statement is correct. It introduced principle of election through nomination for the first time. Again, statement is correct. Third statement is it increased the number of non-official members to provide non-official majority. It is the wrong. It is non-official, not non-official majority, but official majority. Okay, so this statement is wrong. First one, it is made the Governor General's assent to bill is optional. It is impossible because the optional Governor General assent was the mandatory. So this statement is wrong. So only 2. The B is the correct option. Okay. So now there are the facts that you need to remember. Remember particularly this act. This Act of 1892. What is it? It is allowed the discussion on the budget, which previously not allowed. Plus, it is allowed to address the questions to executives. Okay, so this is the the function that given to Legislative Council. Second, it is allowed principle of legislation to nomination, because this particular act of 1892, it is not mentioned the election, but it mentioned the process of nomination. And the nomination, how the nomination will be given when it comes to Central Legislative Council. The non-official members, they will be nominated by the first is the provinces. The provinces in Bengal, okay, in Bombay, in Madras, in Punjab, the Agra. Okay, so these are the all the provinces that will nominate the members there. Second, the Chamber of Commerce in Bengal. So these they also had the power to nominate members for the legislative central legislative council. When it comes to provincial legislative council, who will nominate the members? They will nominate members. First was the municipality. Second was the district boards. Third was the zamindars. Fourth was the chambers of commerce. So these people allowed to nominate member for provincial legislative council headed by the governor of the province, and these were headed by the governor general or the viceroy of India. Okay, so this is the fact that you need to remember about this act of 1892. So remember, there was no process of election introduced in this particular act. There was a process of nomination. Okay, so there was the indirect reference of the election. So this is the one fact you need to remember. So this is might UPSC, KPSC, or in PSI also they might ask this. Next question is about the following act which reference to Indian Council Act 1909. Okay, so first statement, it introduced reservation for the Muslims. It introduced non-official majority in both central and provincial legislative council. Third statement is it transferred subject of the local government to Indians for the first time. So pause the video and answer the question. So see the statement, it is introduced the reservation of Muslim. It is not introduced reservation, it is introduced separate electorate for Muslim. So first statement is wrong. Again, it demands the concentration. Second, it introduced non-official majority in central and provincial legislative council. Again, the wrong. It is introduced the non-official majority in provincial legislative council. Okay, but not central provincial legislative council. Again, when it comes to provincial legislative council, the members, the non-official members, it was the total members, they will be divided into official members and non-official. So this non-official mostly belongs to these Indians. Okay, and when it comes to non-official members, again they will be divided between nominated and the elected. So if you see the balance here, it was more tilted toward the nominated one. So there was it introduced non-official majority, but also addition to non-elected majority. So this is the one more important word that you need to remember here. Third, it transferred the subject of local government to Indians for the first time. Okay, subjects of Indian government to Indians the first time. It is also correct statement. So the correct answer is the C. That is the C3 only. Okay, so we'll move towards the next question. Then we'll see the this Government of India Act 1909 in detail. Next question is again about the Government of India Act 1909. So what are the provisions introduced for the first time they are asking? So first time, provincial autonomy. They are asking separate electorate for Muslim, transfer of reserve, and the transferred subject, then bicameralism at center. Pause the video and answer the question. So the correct answer is it is introduced separate electorate. The provincial autonomy, we'll see later on, it introduced in 1935, Government of India. The transfer reserve and provincial subject, it is introduced in 1919. And bicameralism as center, it is also introduced in 1919. Okay, so next question we'll see about the on the Government of India Act 1909. So the question first statement is it allowed discussion on budget and the adjournment motion. Okay, so this statement. Second is it provided Association of Indian with the Executive Council of Viceroy only. It provided separate electorate for the Presidency Corporation, Chamber of Commerce, universities and zamindars. So pause the video, answer the question. So we'll see the statements. What is it? It allowed discussion on budget and the adjournment motions. Second, it allowed it provided Association of Indians with the Executive Council of Viceroy only. This is the wrong statement, because it is not only the Indian Viceroy Executive Council but also Council of the governors of the provinces. And who was the first Indian to get nominated in Executive Council of Viceroy? He was the Satyendranath. Okay, so he was the Satyendranath Sinha. He was the person to get nominated to Viceroy Executive Council. Okay, third statement, the options are wrong here. It provided separate electorate for the Presidency Corporation, Chambers of Commerce. It is not provided separate electorate, but it provided separate representation. So separate representations for the Presidency Corporation, Chamber of Commerce, University and Zamindars. So this is the one more. It is not provided electorate but representation. Means they got certain number of seats reserved for them. Okay. So also it is allowed discussion on budget and adjournment motion. So let me know this statement is also wrong, because it allowed discussion on budget. It is allowed to ask the supplementary questions. Also it is allowed to move resolution on budget. Okay, in Government of India Act 1893, they allowed just discussion on budget, as well as they allowed the address the executive. But here the function expanded, where they allowed to ask the supplementary question. Okay, the next question followed by the answer of the previous question that can be answered. That is nothing but supplementary question. Second is it is allowed the move resolution on the budget, but it is not mentioned the adjournment motion. So none of the above is correct here. Next question is about the Government of India Act 1919. So this is about the we'll discuss the briefly this what is exactly introduced in Government of India Act, this particular 1909 Government of India Act. So the first it introduced, that is separate electorate for Muslim. Okay, and the Lord Minto is considered as father of communal electorate in India, and this particular act also known as Morley-Minto Reform. Who was the Morley? He was the Secretary of State, and Minto was the Viceroy of India. Okay, so this is about the first that the major provision of the Government of India Act 1909. Second is it is given Indian representation or Indian representation in Viceroy's Executive Council. Okay, so now don't confuse here. In 1861, what the Indians got representation in Indian Legislative Council. Okay, and here they got in Viceroy Executive Council. So first time Indians got representation in Legislative Council in 1861 and Executive Council in 1909. So these are the two major aspects introduced in particular act. Next, when they got the separate electorate for Muslim, that time their the condition per voter also kept lower than the Hindus. Okay, the whatever the education, the income level was there, that kept lower than the other people. Okay, so this is the one more aspect introduced. Again, it introduced the representation for the zamindars, universities, and other chambers of commerce. Okay, previously they got the right to nominate, but now they got direct representation in the Indian Legislative Council. So these are the important facts we need to know about the Government of India Act 1909. So we'll move towards the next act, that is about the Government of India Act 1919. So this particular act, it established bicameral legislature at the center. It gives the equal representation to Indian in Viceroy Executive Council. Third, it increased the communal representation by providing separate electorate for the Sikh, Indian Christian, Anglo-Indians, and the Europeans. Pause the video and answer the question. So if you see the answer, the first statement, it is established the bicameral legislature at center. It is established bicameral legislature. It is correct. Bicameral legislature means it established two houses. That is, first is the Council of State, and second was the Legislative Assembly. And the election for these two houses will be held directly. So the direct election introduced in the first time in Government of India Act 1919. Second is it gave equal representation to Indians. This statement is also correct because the total member of Viceroy's Executive Council, okay, there were 6 members, okay, plus 1 member was the Commander in Chief. So out of these 6 members, 3 would be Indians, but this Commander of Chief will be European or the British. So still they maintain the majority of the Europeans or the Britishers in the Executive Council, but they given equal representation in the 6-member Executive Council to Indians. Okay, so statement 2 is also correct. Third is it increased the communal representation by the providing separate electorate for the Sikh, Indian Christian, Anglo-Indians, and the European. So this is also correct. Correct answer is the D for donkey. That is 1, 2, 3 all are correct. Next question we'll move towards it is again about the Government of India Act 1919. It talks about it created Public Service Commission at central and the province level. Second, it created bicameral legislature at the center. It introduced direct election in the Legislative Council. Next two statement I answered in previous questions only. There is no need to pause video and answer the question. You know, next two are correct. Now let's talk about the first one only. If you remember, it is introduced only Central Public Service Commission that established in 1926. Okay, not the Provincial Legislative Council. So the correct answer is the B. That is ball. 2 and 3 are correct. Next statement. Next question will go. Next question is with reference to Government of India Act 1919, which one is the incorrect? So the what is incorrect? It introduced direct diarchy in provinces. It guaranteed franchisee to person on the basis of property, tax, education. It abolished the separate electorate. It separated provincial budget from the central budget. Now let me know which one is the correct. So the correct answer for this statement is the C, that is abolish the separate electorate. That because they are asking incorrect one. These three are the correct statement, and incorrect is the separate electorate. Because they are not abolished, they have strengthened separate electorate by giving the electorate to the Europeans, Anglo-Indians, as well as the other Britishers, okay, Sikhs. So they given the expanded or strengthened the this electorate, separate electorate system. Okay, so this is this step particular about this statement. Next, over 35, we'll just summarize the what we saw in the Government of India Act 1919. Okay, so this particular act is known as Montagu-Chelmsford Reform, and this act was the meant for the introduce responsible government in India. Okay, so this is come after the August Declaration given by the Chelmsford. Okay, the first provision of this act was it established diarchy. Diarchy means the subject will be divided between two people. So first will be the Governor General or the Viceroy. The transferred subject will be he will decide on the recommendation or the advice of the ministers, and these ministers will be responsible for the Indian Legislative Council. Okay. Second, again the Governor General or Viceroy, he will decide or execute the function. Second function based in reserve subject. Okay, this was about the transferred one. This is about the reserved subjects, and he will make the law on this reserved subject on the advice of the Executive Council, and these people are not responsible for the Indian Legislative Council. Second, the important provision introduced by this article act, that is the direct election, and the direct election was for both the houses of the Central Indian Legislative Council. Third was the separated budget. Okay, so the budget separate, there would be separate budget per province as well as per center. Fourth important provision, it introduced bicameralism at center. Also one important is that that is out of 6, 3 members will be Indians in Viceroy Executive Council. So this is the one more important development. Also it is given the extended the franchisee. The franchisee will be awarded based on the education, the property and the income of the people. So that nearly 10% people got the right here. Again, the important function was important provision was it is created office of High Commissioner, and this particular office created in London, and this particular person or the office got some function of the Secretary of State. Okay, so these were the important provision introduced in Government of India Act 1990. Next is we'll move toward the next article. Next question. It is about the Government of India Act 1935. So we'll see the provisions, major provisions related to this act through the MCQs. Okay. So the first statement is it adopted diarchy at the center and introduced provincial autonomy. Second, it introduced bicameralism in all the provinces. It provided separate electorate for the depressed class, women, labor in all provinces. Okay. Fourth one, it proposed the All India Federation consisting of British India and the princely state. So answer the question. Pause the video, answer the question. We'll see the answer. We'll see the statement. It adopted diarchy at center and introduced provincial autonomy. Statement is correct. Second is introduced bicameralism all the provinces. It not introduced all the provinces but 6 out of 11 provinces. And which 6 provinces? There were mostly the currently the India, that is after partition, the what we call the India, okay, the after leaving the Bangladesh and Pakistan, okay, mostly the Bombay, Madras, UP, Assam, Bihar, okay, and the Odisha. Okay, so these provinces got the this bicameralism. Okay, so these were the mostly the mainland, the present Indian, whatever the British provinces were there, they got the bicameralism. Next, it provided separate electorate to depressed class women labor in all provinces. So for depressed class women and labor all the provinces, but in except Northwest Frontier province. So the third statement is correct, wrong. So the woman got 3% reservation everywhere, but except the Northwest Frontier province. So that's why the third statement is wrong. Also, it proposed the All India Federation consists of British, India and Princely State. This statement is correct. So 3 is wrong. If you eliminate 3 everywhere, you will get the answer. So second is also wrong. Okay. So 1 and 4 is only correct. Next, we'll move toward the next question, which is about which is the not introduced by the Government of India Act. Provincial autonomy, diarchy at center, federal court, Central Public Service Commission. Answer the question. Comparatively easy question. What is not introduced? That is the Central Public Service Commission. It introduced diarchy at center, and the previously in Government of India Act 1919, it introduced diarchy at provinces, which abolished it, and it instead of diarchy, it introduced the provincial autonomy. Okay. Second, the diarchy that introduced in the center. Second, federal court also it introduced, and Central Public Commission it introduced by Government of India Act 1919. Okay, and finally when it established 1926. Okay. Next question we move towards. So what are the other major features of this particular act, the Government of India Act, if you see? So this instead of central, the replaced this one, it introduced Federal Public Service Commission, it introduced Provincial Public Service Commission, and introduced Joint Public Service Commission. And these are the 3 public service commission that still present in India. In Indian context, the federal, it has become the UPSC, that is Union Public Service Commission. The province that become the SPSC, that is State Public Service Commission. These 2 are the constitutional body. And Joint Public Service Commission, that is provision present in Constitution, but it will be established by the law of the Parliament, so that it would be statutory service commission, the Joint Public Service Commission. Previously, there was the only one seat established for the Punjab and the Haryana in India. Okay. Second, the important provision introduced by this particular act, the Government India Act, 3 lists. Okay, what we call in 7th schedule, present day 7th schedule. There was the federal list. Okay, there was this provincial list, and the third was the concurrent list. Okay, and there was the one more catch is there, the residuary power. Okay, the subjects which will not be covered in any of these act. Okay, that will be regulated by the Viceroy. And present day it is with the Parliament of India. So this is the major aspect of this particular act. Okay, also it introduced the bicameralism at center, which was the previously it was there, it is continued. Okay, also when this particular act, Government of India Act 1935, it came into effect in 1937, and it is again the stopped or abolished in 1939 after the breakdown of World War II, and same time the Congress ministers also resigned. Okay, so this is the some information that you need to know about this particular act. Next, about the Indian Independence Act 1949. So before going to this act, we'll briefly see the whatever the development. Okay, so when it comes to the India's independence, we know that after 1940, that is the after August Topper, subsequently Cripps Hopper came. Okay, there was the top transfer of power started with the August Topper. Okay, but it was taken like the concrete shape after the when the cabinet mission came to India. So after the cabinet mission came to India, the certain provision of the cabinet mission which were not acceptable the both sides. But at the same time, what happened in February 1947, the British Prime Minister was there, Clement Attlee. So what this person says, he picks the date for transfer of power. He tells about the June 30, 1948 would be the date where the power of the India will be transferred to the responsible hand. Okay, so this, after the fixing the date, there was the large scale communal violence started in India. So after what happened, this large scale communal violence, the Congress, led by the Indian, presently present India, the Indian leader Jawaharlal Nehru, Gandhiji, as well as the Sardar Patel. So these people accepted the partition plan. That partition plan came in June 3, 1947. And this particular plan is known as the Mountbatten Plan. So this particular plan says that those provinces which are not agreed to accept the constitution produced by the Constitution Assembly, they can have their own constitution. So explicitly it talks about the partition of India. Okay, and this particular, to implement this Mountbatten Plan, the Indian Independence Act of 1947 came. Okay, so this is the brief background of the Indian Independence Act of 1947. So we'll move towards our questions. So see the questions. First question is about the 49, sorry, it should be 47. It was based on the recommendation of the cabinet mission. Now there is no need to put papers, I already told. It is empowered constitution assemblies to frame and adopt any constitution for their respective nations. Third, it designated Governor General of India and provincial governors as constitutional head of their state. It reserved power to amend with the British Parliament, including power to enact or repeal. Pause the video, answer the question. So just I explained, the first statement is wrong because it is came by the Mountbatten Plan. Okay. Second statement is empowered Constitution Assembly to frame and adopt any constitution for the respective nation. Correct. It designates Governor General and provincial governor constitutional head of their state. Again the correct. It reserves power to amend with British Parliament, including power to enact and repeal. It is the wrong statement. Okay. The power to amend the particular law, that is Indian Independence Act, and the other laws that enacted by the British Parliament. So the power to amend lies in the constitutional or constituent legislature of the respective dominion, the dominion of India as well as dominion of Pakistan. So these are the two statements here you need to remember. Okay, so the correct answer is the two only. Two statements are correct. Next question is the, with the following is not provision in Indian Independence Act. Governance of each of the dominion and the provinces will be carried out by Government of India Act 1935. The princely state were free to join either dominion or remain independent. The title of Emperor of India was the abolished. Both dominions were made the republic immediately. Answer the question. So the correct answer for this is both dominions were made the republic immediately, because this is the incorrect one. When the India became republic, it became a republic on 26th January 1950 when the Constitution of India commenced, and when the Pakistan became a republic, it became republic in 1956. Okay, immediately after that it fell into military dictatorship. Okay, so they not made in the republic immediately, but after 4 years. So they were dominion state, not a republic. Next is the before going to, we'll just summarize what we saw in Indian Independence Act, the particular act that came to implement the Mountbatten Plan, which is also known as June 3rd Plan. Okay, Also, it is made the governor generals and the governors of the province constitutional head. Okay, and they will be appointed by the British Crown on the recommendation of Dominion Cabinet. Okay. Third, the important provision was the Constitution as a constituent assembly of the particular that Dominion. It will be make the law, or it will act as a legislature for the Dominion until the election happens. Okay, so that was the major provision. Also, the power to amend the Indian Independence Act, or the act already in force in India, that was the power to amend, which was it made provision that it will lies with the Indian this constituent assembly or the constituent legislature. Okay, so these were the major provision of this particular act. Also, it is dropped the title of Emperor of India. Also, it deprived the British Crown from the asserting any sovereignty on Indian or the two dominions. Okay, also the Governor General of India, okay, and Governor General of Pakistan, they got the all power to the assign the bill, okay, on behalf of the British Crown. Okay, so these were the some important provision particular pertaining to Indian Independence Act. Okay, so the next question is who was the first Indian to be law minister in British India? Now the answer to the question is this one. This is quite tricky question. Let's see who answers. If I say the correct answer is the Satyendra Prasad Sinha. Why the Satyendra Prasad Sinha? Because it is talking about law minister in British India. B.R. Ambedkar, he was the first law minister of Dominion of India as well as Republic of India. Jogendranath Mandal, he was the first law minister during when the India immediately got independence. Okay, when the Muslim League and Congress, they together formed the government. Satyendra Kailasnath Katsu, he was the second law minister of India after resignation of B.R. Ambedkar. And Satyendra Prasad Sinha, he was the first law minister in British India because you are aware about Government of India Act 1909. It made the provision that the Indians will be given the representation in Viceroy Executive Council, and the Satyendra Prasad Sinha, he got representation in Viceroy Executive Council as a law member. So the Viceroy Executive Council nothing but the Cabinet of India. So technically he was the first law minister of British India. Okay, so the focus on the word that is the British India. Okay, next question is which one of the following you are not introduced in Government of India Act 1935? Again, the question is repeated. Okay, so we'll drop this question. So this is for today. We have finished the historical background. Okay, we have finished all the acts. We have seen what are the catches, what came first time introduced in particular act, and what were the not provision. And we have seen how the development, like budget, how the powers or the functions of the legislative council expanded. Okay, when the direct election came, when the in nomination came. Okay, so these all the technical things we have seen in detail. Hope you would have enjoyed the session. Tomorrow we'll meet. That time we'll discuss the making of Indian Constitution as well as the feature of Indian Constitution. For today, thank you very much.